Right now, somewhere on the internet, a dead man is warning you about Antarctica. His name was Richard Byrd, and he was the most decorated explorer America ever produced. They will tell you he came back from the ice and warned of an enemy that could strike from the poles of craft that flew at impossible speed, of something waiting beneath the continent. He never said those words. He has been dead for over 60 years, and he is still the most quoted man in the biggest conspiracy on Earth. This is Antarctica, the coldest, driest, highest, emptiest place on the planet. A continent with no country, no capital, no native people who ever called it home, and no single government that rules it. It is also the only place left that we agreed by treaty to simply leave alone, and almost the moment we did, we began building legends about what it was hiding. Nazi fortresses buried in the ice. A secret war fought with flying saucers. A wall at the edge of the world. And at the center of every one of those stories stands the same man. A real hero who cannot defend himself. Tonight we are going to follow Richard Byrd to the bottom of the world, walk through every theory built on his name, and separate the parts that are insane from the parts that are completely, verifiably true. Because the real reason you cannot just go to Antarctica is stranger than any lie ever told about it. The rules. Start with what is real, because the real version is unsettling enough. In 1959, at the height of the Cold War, 12 nations did something almost unheard of. They took an entire continent and agreed to demilitarize it. The Antarctic Treaty came into force in 1961, covering everything south of 60 degrees latitude. No military bases, no weapons testing, no nuclear explosions, no nuclear waste. Every territorial claim that already existed was frozen in place, and no new claim could ever be made. On paper, it is one of the most idealistic documents our species has ever produced, but read it again and something colder appears. An entire landmass, larger than Europe, placed under the control of no one and the ownership of everyone. There is no Antarctic passport, there is no Antarctic visa, and yet you still cannot just go. If you are an American citizen, the law requires you to file advance notification with the State Department, a form recommended months before you ever set foot on the ice. If you are British, the Antarctic Act of 1994 demands a government permit for any expedition. Break the environmental rules and the penalties are real. Civil fines of up to $10,000 for a single knowing violation, every day counted as a separate offense. A continent with no government somehow still has laws, and the people who enforce them are not down there. They are waiting for you when you come home. The hero. So who was the man at the center of all this? Before the conspiracies, before the forged quotes, Richard Byrd was simply the bravest explorer alive. In 1929, he became one of the first human beings to fly over the South Pole, a place that until almost yesterday in human history, no one had ever seen. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was a household name on every continent. And then, in 1934, he did something no one had ever done. He spent the Antarctic winter alone. A single man in a tiny shack buried in the ice, 100 miles from the nearest other human being, through months of total darkness and cold that could kill in minutes. It nearly destroyed him. His stove and generator leaked carbon monoxide into that buried room, and Byrd slowly began to poison himself, drifting in and out of consciousness, too weak to crawl outside, hiding how sick he was over the radio so no one would risk their lives coming for him. They came anyway. They saved him. This was the man, not a soldier hunting flying saucers, an explorer who had already looked the continent in the eye and barely survived it. Remember that, because everything that comes next was built on his name. The expedition that retreated. The winter of 1946. The Second World War is barely over, and the most powerful navy on Earth turns toward the bottom of the world. The mission was called Operation Highjump. The numbers alone sound like an invasion. Roughly 4,700 men, 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and the man chosen to lead it into the ice was Richard Byrd. Then, just as suddenly, it ended. An expedition planned to last 6 to 8 months wrapped up in a matter of weeks. The fleet turned around and came home. And for the conspiracy world, that was all the proof they needed. The story spread that Highjump was never research at all, that Byrd had sailed south to attack a hidden enemy base and had been driven back. Driven back by craft that rose out of the ice and moved at impossible speed. An armada of 4,700 men, the theory goes, defeated by something waiting beneath Antarctica. The hero, who had survived the continent alone, had supposedly returned to fight whatever was hiding inside it. The ghost base. And who were they fighting? For that, go back to 1938. A German ship called the Schwabenland sailed south on the orders of the Reich. Its crews flew aircraft over a vast stretch of the Antarctic coast, photographing the land and dropping thousands of metal darts stamped with the swastika to claim it. They named the region New Swabia. That part is true, it happened. And from that single real expedition grew one of the most enduring legends of the 20th century, that the Nazis had built a secret base beneath the ice. A geothermally heated fortress, hidden in a rare ice-free pocket of the continent. A refuge for the last of the Reich and later the birthplace of their flying saucers. They even gave it a name. Base 211. The last battalion, waiting in the cold for a war that never came. A real expedition. A real swastika on real Antarctic ice. A defeated American fleet. A national hero leading it. You can see why this story has survived for 80 years. You can see why it still racks up millions of views. There is just one problem, and we are getting to it. The edge of the world. But the theory goes further, much further, because for some, Antarctica is not a continent at all. In their version, the Earth is flat, a disk, and the ring of ice we call Antarctica is not land. It is a wall, a barrier of ice over 100 feet tall, running around the entire rim of the world, holding the oceans in like the side of a bowl. And the Antarctic Treaty in this telling was never about peace. It exists for one reason: to stop ordinary people from ever reaching the edge. This is where the famous claim is born, that there is a no-fly zone over Antarctica. That planes are forbidden from crossing it. That if you tried to fly over the South Pole, someone would stop you, because there is something down there you are not allowed to see. Add the photographs of strange pyramid shapes rising from the ice. Add a 500-year-old map that supposedly shows the Antarctic coastline before the ice ever covered it, a map that should have been impossible to draw. And you have a continent that, according to the internet, is the most heavily guarded secret on the planet. The flinch. So which is it? A demilitarized science reserve or a wall at the edge of a flat Earth? A research fleet or a defeated army? Before we answer, you have to understand the one thing all of these theories ignore: what that place actually does to a human body. On the 21st of July, 1983, instruments at Russia's Vostok station recorded a temperature of -89.2 degrees Celsius, the coldest air ever measured on the surface of the Earth. At that temperature, the moisture in your breath freezes before it clears your face. Exposed skin does not slowly grow cold. It dies. And then there are the katabatic winds, rivers of heavy, frozen air that pour off the high interior of the ice sheet without warning, fast enough to flip an aircraft out of the sky. During Operation Highjump, that is exactly what happened. A plane called George 1 flew into a wall of white, a whiteout so complete there was no horizon, no ground, no sky. It struck the ice at full speed. 3 men were killed. That was the enemy Byrd's fleet was fighting, not saucers. The continent itself, the same continent that had nearly killed him alone 12 years before. The truth. So let us take the legends apart, one by one, because every single one of them has a real answer. Operation Highjump did not retreat from a battle. It was officially the United States Navy's Antarctic Developments Program, and Byrd told reporters exactly what it was before he ever left port: a mission to train naval personnel and test ships and aircraft in extreme cold, and to map the continent. The early end was not a defeat. It was the weather, the impossible scale of the place, and the death of George 1's crew. There was no enemy. There was only the ice. And that famous Byrd quote, the warning about objects that fly from pole to pole at incredible speed, it is real, and it is a lie at the same time. Byrd gave an interview to a Chilean newspaper in March of 1947, but what he actually said was that the United States should protect itself against the possibility of invasion by hostile aircraft flying over the polar regions. He was talking about enemy bombers crossing the poles in a future war. Ordinary Cold War fear from a man who had spent his life in those skies. Decades later, someone twisted the translation into a sighting of impossible craft. The hero never said the words the legend puts in his mouth, and he was not alive to correct it. It gets worse. The single biggest source of the entire saucer story is a book a so-called secret diary of Admiral Byrd, describing a hidden world inside the Earth. He did not write it. It was invented after his death, his name forged onto a fantasy, sold to the world as a lost document. The man who nearly died alone in the dark to map that continent honestly had his honesty stolen the moment he could no longer object. As for Base 211, in 2007, two scientists, Colin Summerhays and Peter Beeching, published a peer-reviewed study in the journal Polar Record titled simply, Hitler's Antarctic Base, the Myth and the Reality. The German expedition was real, but it lasted only weeks. Its crews barely spent a day on the ice, and its true goal was to scout a future whaling station for cooking fat, not to build a fortress. And here is the detail that ends it. In a frozen desert, nothing decays. Structures do not vanish. Yet 70 years of expeditions from dozens of nations have crossed that ground, and not one has ever found a single brick, a single beam, a single trace of any base. The wall at the edge of the world? In 2024, a group that included committed flat Earth believers actually traveled to Antarctica to settle it for themselves. There they watched the sun circle the sky for 24 hours without setting, the midnight sun, something impossible on a flat disk, and exactly what a globe predicts. At least one of them admitted on camera that he had been wrong. The pyramids are nunataks, ordinary mountain peaks, carved into pyramid shapes by millions of years of ice grinding them from every side. And the no-fly zone is not a secret. It is physics. Modern jets must stay within reach of an airport where they could divert in an emergency, and Antarctica has no fuel, no runways, no rescue. So planes route around it, not because they are forbidden, because there is nowhere to land if something goes wrong. So why can't you just go to Antarctica? You can. Tens of thousands of tourists do it every single year on regulated ships across the Drake Passage. What stops the rest of us is not a wall or a guard or a lie. It is a permit, a brutal climate, and a price. The continent is restricted. It is not forbidden. Your verdict. And that is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. We were handed a real continent, ruled by no one, frozen and demilitarized by treaty, one of the most extraordinary things our species has ever agreed to do. We were handed a real hero, a man who looked that ice in the eye, alone, and lived. And instead of telling either story honestly, we buried both under flying saucers and ghost fortresses and walls at the edge of the world. We put words in a dead man's mouth because the truth, somehow, was not enough. So here is the question. Drop a red circle in the comments if you believe the real story is the strange one, a whole continent placed beyond the reach of any nation, a hero erased by his own legend, guarded by nothing but cold. Or drop a white circle if you think there is still something down there they are not telling us. Both sides have a case. But before you choose, consider this. The most frightening idea is not that Antarctica is hiding a secret. It is that the most isolated, untouched place on the entire planet, the one piece of Earth we swore to leave alone, is the one place we could not stop ourselves from lying about. Which answer scares you more?